Michael Nagy here with Jiggy Jag TV and DiscoveringBands.com. And for everyone watching, if you share this video on my channel and help support the awesome bands I feature. And today I'm here with Luna13. How you doing today?
I'm doing amazing, and thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I want to start off by saying your music is really dark and extreme. And what got you into this whole dark style of music?
Well, you know, there are two separate subjects in my life that I kind of incorporated together as one. As far as like the dark stuff is concerned, you know, I started going to India when I was really young. I mean, in my teenage years, and I started worshiping the goddess Kali out there. And so the whole perspective of darkness is that we have to kind of overcome our shadow self in order to find out who we are as human beings. And so I'm a firm believer that we have to kind of actively look at our shadow self. So there's a philosophy kind of around the darkness that's more of a spiritual matter, and we just kind of fuse that into, you know, my personal favorite style of music, which is kind of what we do. I was a bass player for bands for years. I saw The Prodigy in 2008 in London, and I said, what if I do a black metal version of that? What I heard from them that night was one of the heaviest sounds I've ever heard. Meanwhile, I love dark-themed black metal, so I started coming up with that concept then. I started learning a lot about dark ambient music. I put out a bunch of dark ambient ritual CDs that were actually pretty dark as well. And then as I started progressing, learning more and more about electronica, I started creating this particular sound that we have now. But the goal always was to infuse that spiritual darkness into music. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. And right now, I think this band or this project is probably as aligned as it ever has been with. It's taken me this long to create this sound that we actually have, which is not an easy thing to do, because even though it's bass music, I have to create every single thing that I do. I won't download samples. I won't do anything like that. I have to create every single stage of what we do. So we're finally at this place where I feel like we're completely, fully functional as far as what we are and what we represent, you know, right now.
What would you say would be one of your biggest shock values?
You know, as far as us as a band, the shock value, we close with a song called Upside Down, and that particular, not only is the video shocking, the video earned us one of the top 5 best black metal bands by Worldwide Underground. But when you hear this sound live, like, you know, Lilith is the singer, but there's also this dark voice that I create, which is Luna13, which is Doc Luna, actually. When you hear it live, and when you hear what we sound like live, it actually is pretty intimidating. And that particular song, Upside Down, I think not only has it scared people or shocked people, we were even shut down in Las Vegas while we were performing that song. Because the mixture of the satanic theme, Lilith spitting blood all over the air, and we have crosses that are upside down during that song, we got shut down in Vegas. So we're pretty extreme, but I like dark art, and I think that's kind of what our shadow self is for. I think we should channel that into something creative. I think that's the best place for our shadow self.
So has there been some controversy with different venues not wanting to have you, or different stuff like that, or?
You know, what is changing is now there's a slight demand for us, and so that has shifted things a little bit. But at the very beginning, when we did our last headlining tour, we would watch venues pass us up. They would actually tell us we were too dark. Meanwhile, they'd have other black metal bands roll right through their venue. So we knew at that time that we were kind of pushing things over the top a little bit. Which, to be honest, was still surprising. I mean, I remember there was a venue in Texas that passed on us, but then they had like Tomb Mold come the week after. I'm like, how do you have a black metal band like Tomb Mold coming through, but we're too dark? I think that the way we project it, and I think the fact that we're really sincere in what we do, I think that kind of pushes it over the top a little bit. So we used to have problems with venues. Not so much more now. As a matter of fact, during this pandemic, I cannot believe how many venues have already reached out to us and asked if we wanted to play. I mean, we could probably even create a tour right now without even having to work very hard to do it. So it's shifting right now. But yes, originally we had a lot of venues. We even had a couple large clubs in Los Angeles wouldn't allow us to play on their main stage ever. They'd only let us play in the VIP rooms.
Wow. That's when you know you're doing something right. When you're
That's how we see it, and we're not going to ever change that. We don't care. We're so genuine with what we do. We're not going to shift it at all. I could even see Luna 13 getting darker as we start to progress. The Whiskey labeled us as the darkest band. Not the Whiskey. A couple people that work at the Whiskey, because there are other people that may disagree with that at the Whiskey. But then we've had a few people at the Whiskey tell us we were the darkest band they've ever had on their stage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how would you even take the project even more further into that direction of darker and extreme?
Well, and this is, I belong to a spiritual path in India called Agora. Agora means to live without fear. And so what we actively do, I'm a worshiper of the dark goddess, and so is Lilith. We actually are like really sincerely in practice most of the time, even living out here in Joshua Tree, where we believe the more darkness you can handle, the more light you can handle too. And so we're constantly trying to press the boundaries of that darkness, believing that also opens the option for a lot of conscious light to come through as well. So I could see us not only visually, if we were ever end up in a situation where we're on a full headlining tour and we have the ability to do whatever we want, I'm sure there's going to be full horror movie screens behind us, Baphomet symbols and lasers shot out into the audience, and I can see our music, even right now, the album we're working on now, which we're working on a new album we'll probably release later this year, I can already see is darker than the album we just were working on. So yeah, we are progressively getting more darker at the same time because I believe there's value in it. I mean, to create an atmosphere for people to come and really kind of step into their shadow and look at their fears, we're all about that. And
visually, your videos are amazing. Do they take a while to make, like big production?
The last 4 videos we did were all in quarantine. And now the videos beforehand were pretty amazing. I love the videos we have now too. The Sekhmet video I love that we just had come out. But we're not, because of the quarantine, not able to fully operate at the level we want to. So I believe the next series of videos we have when this pandemic is kind of cleared out will probably even be a little bit darker. Yeah, but I love the visual stuff. We really want to entertain people, and really kind of show people something different they've never seen before.
Yeah, and tell us about the background you have up right now.
I was just, before you called, I was scanning background images, and I just said, let me just pop my logo in there, and I popped it in, and it was just so clear. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to keep it right there. So yeah, I just decided to do that right before you called. I didn't even know that. I didn't know the option existed until I saw someone else doing it. I'm like, how do I put a background setting? So this is the first time I've displayed that ever.
It looks really clear and good.
Awesome.
So you said you're working on some new material now, right?
Working on new music. Yeah, the sound that I've been formulating has taken me about like 7 years, and I wanted to create a sound that was completely, utterly unique, that when you heard it, you'd go, that's actually Luna 13. And I wanted to be a sound that was brand new, and it's taken me a while to get to a point where I got it, and right now I am totally in the zone, more than I ever have, and so I keep working on songs, also working on perfecting this particular sound. Yeah.
Wow. When do you plan on releasing any new material?
Probably at the end of the year. I mean, we just had a release, and we're like heavily pushing that right now. But yeah, no, probably at the end of the year or early next year. We'll see what goes on with the pandemic. But one thing is certain is we plan to stay busy and active no matter what's going on out there. Whether we have to make a bunch of videos to entertain people or whether we go on the road, we plan on staying busy.
Awesome. This pandemic's been a lot of tough, dark times. Does that help fuel new music for you?
It's mixed. When I was younger, what led me to go to India at an early age was I had a couple pretty intense health problems. And so I went to India. Basically, I didn't even think I was going to live very long when I was younger. And so that actually kind of started me on the whole path of worshiping Kali and looking at your shadow self. So I had to leave music when I was younger because of I was in a couple bands that were doing really well. I was even in a band with the singer for Grip Inc., Gus Chambers. I was in a band with him, and but my point being is I had to leave music because of other circumstances, not due to me desiring to leave it. I had to go to India to kind of repair my health. So when the pandemic kicked in, it brought up this anger of like, am I going to have to let go of music again? Not due to my desire, but due to just kind of what's going on in the world. So there was a lot of really tough emotions for me that I did want to channel into the music, but it also did make it a little bit tougher too. Now that I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, I do feel that what I'm working on right now is a little bit more lively and has a little bit more energy to it. But no, Goddess was that was the name of our last CD, Goddess, which was God Dis, like a dis being Dispat or Pluto. It was highly important because all the stuff that was going on to stay creative, but there were some tough moments in that too, where it was hard to kind of access creative energy because the type of suffering that was going on made it somewhat of a challenge in certain phases, especially at the very beginning. I mean, because Luna 13 was on a roll. I mean, we were just starting. I mean, we were opening for some of my favorite bands. We were opening for Mushroom Head. We were opening for Power Man 5000. We opened up for 45 Grave the night before. It was March 13th, Friday 13th, and the pandemic started the day after. We opened up for 45 Grave, and we were touring on our own headlining tours. So it was a real bummer for us because as a band, you kind of have to wait for your slot. You wait for your turn. And our turn was coming right when the pandemic started. So that was kind of frustrating too, because it kind of felt like, well, when we go back out, we might be starting all over again when we were that band that was just, our turn was coming. We could see it. Although what's happened with our label now and Cop and Selena, we're now, our name is expanding even further than we would have thought. But yeah, it's been interesting times, that's for sure.
Yeah, I want to say, I know the venues in the United States consider you pretty dark. What about in different countries?
Well, in Germany, Cop has connections out there in Germany. We've been in Orcus magazine a few times. I think right now our name is just starting to get out there in other countries, just now. When Luna 13, because I spent a big portion of my upbringing in India. One of my first two releases I did release in India only. And so we, strangely enough, have a relatively interesting India-Nepal fan base. When we first came out, we also were on the charts in places like Nepal and India.
Wow.
Yeah. But that was a focus. I purposely did that. I, living in India, saw the way they network there, knew that if I released something in India, it would probably get a lot of like social media attention, which it did. As a matter of fact, a couple radio stations in India even banned it banned the CD Rakshasi because there was talk of India serial killers in it. And because we have our own set of dark things that go on here, well, some of these countries have their own set of dark things that go on too. Like India had like Thug Bayram, and a couple serial killers out there, and I did a couple songs about Indian serial killers, and they're like, we don't want that on our. They had a totally different response than America, where America's like, with music, that's pretty common theme to talk like that, but in other countries it's not, and that surprised me that it had kind of a negative effect in India on some of the radio stations.
Yeah, it's interesting how things are different in different countries. Yep. And stuff. Like I saw too. I went to a couple festivals in Germany, like Amphi Festival, and you can even see some of the performances in Europe are a little more extreme and stuff.
Yeah, we are getting a lot of people asking us to go out there. We really want to get out there. And once this whole pandemic blows over, hopefully that is what happens. But when it does, I think that we will probably end up going to Europe pretty quick. At least we'll desire that, that's for sure.
Awesome. And if people want to look you up online, on social media, get your music, how do they do that?
Instagram, which is Instagram Luna13 official. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram on Luna13 official, but we use Instagram as our main source of marketing.
Awesome. Cool. Well, it was good having you and talking with you, and everybody looked them up.
Thank you so much for having me, too. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.